Hi guys, it's Dr. Tiffany here. So today's topic is going to be on guilt. We're going to examine twisted guilt versus true guilt, okay? But in order to do that, we're going to have to first discuss control. What do we have control over in our lives? Well, the only thing we have 100% control over are our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors, right? Everything else is external influence, right? So everything around us that happens from the outside coming in, we may have influence over. It could be a high degree of influence to give us an advantage, or it could be a low degree of influence to give us a disadvantage. So for example, if you're watching me right now and you like the topic, it's interesting, I sound somewhat intelligent, you may continue watching, so I might have a high level of influence. However, if I sound like a complete goofball, which I totally am, and you don't like the topic, you're probably just going to stop. And that's totally okay too. But you understand that there is a level of influence that we have over external situations, right? That is high or low, right? If we use the word control instead of influence, then we give ourselves responsibility if something goes wrong in our lives, okay? So now let's talk a little bit about true guilt versus twisted guilt. So we'll start with true guilt first. So imagine I go to my mailbox when I get home and I open it up, and when I open it up I see a letter, and that letter says I owe $10,000 to somebody. That sounds awful, right? So it's going to make me feel super angry. I'm going to walk into my house really irritated and frustrated, trying to figure out what the circumstances are. But then my cute dog jumps up on top of me and I push him down and say, "No, stop it. Leave me alone. I'm really super irritated right now." So later on, after all the dust finally settles, I feel super guilty for talking to my dog and treating him the way that I did. Now, I consider that somewhat a true guilt, right? Because I had control over my behaviors. I didn't need to be aggressive towards my dog because I was angry. I could have taken a moment to kind of just woosah, right? And get my stuff together, take a walk around the block, and not emote so much toxicity and negative energy throughout my house because I had internal control over the situation, right? I just didn't take responsibility for it. However, if there's a different circumstance in our lives, let's say we are a surgeon and unfortunately we lose somebody's life and in our hands, and we can't control the whole circumstance of what happens and how the body's reacting or responding or how much this disease has spread or not spread, right? We don't have so much control over the circumstances. We have influence over what we know and the things that we can do, but sometimes external forces can get in the way and complicate a circumstance or a situation, and our influence becomes low rather than high. But we're never 100% complete control over things that are happening around us. It could be a surgery, it could be a car accident. Of course, it can apply to my active duty military service members, even veterans, and the circumstances that they experience overseas in war. But we're not in control over those external circumstances, okay? We only have influence, and we do our best with the amount of influence we have. When we feel guilty about a loss under those terms, we feel a twisted guilt because we try to create the sense of control and responsibility under those circumstances we didn't have control over. We manipulate how we're perceiving the situation. We manipulate it with should've, could've, would've's, right? We look at it like we should have had a crystal ball to predict the future, right? Like hindsight is 20/20, but we don't know that in the moment. And we only have a certain degree of influence, and if we give ourselves the illusion that we're 100% control over the circumstances and it's our fault and we have pure responsibility if something goes wrong because of those external factors, then we're really twisting it, and we're creating this sense of guilt that it feels like it should be there, and it's definitely a substantial feeling of guilt, but it's very twisted and it's very manipulated, and sometimes we hold on to that guilt for long periods of time in our life, like we won't ever forgive ourselves for this, and I won't forgive myself for that because I gave myself the illusion that I was in control when you really weren't in control. So what I'm asking you is, the guilt that you're harboring inside you, is it a real true guilt, a behavior that you can correct going forward in the future, right? So you become a better human being altogether, like controlling my anger in a certain circumstance, right? Or is this guilt something that you're twisting, giving yourself the illusion you had control over a circumstance that you didn't really have control over? When we hold on to that twisted guilt, we plant a seed of toxicity into our mind, and we let that seed effervesce and grow within us. That negativity causes us to withdraw, to not love ourselves to the degree that we should, to not connect to others, to not have a spiritual connection, to drink more alcohol. It really puts us in a place where we become detached, and that is an unhealthy place to be. Naturally, the enemy wants us to feel that way, right? They want that negative seed of toxicity to overcome our spirit. And if we allow it and we continue to water that seed with self-loathing, never being able to forgive ourselves, separating ourselves from loved ones and our spiritual essence, is really doing a disservice. And that's what the enemy wants, but we can't let the enemy win that. I don't know what kind of enemy you may be fighting. It could be a spiritual one, it could be a very literal enemy that we have in our lives, but it's for you to consider. Are you holding on to twisted guilt? The guilt that we tend to manipulate in the illusion that we have control over a circumstance that we don't, and we don't want to forgive ourselves because of it? Or is it true guilt? You did something wrong, and now you got to correct the behavior going forward. Once you become aware of it, then you become accountable to it. So either way, ask yourself, which one is it that you are harboring within you? And once you come to recognize it, what are you going to do about it? Are we going to change? Are we going to accept that? Are we going to let it spread? Or are we going to stop that growth? It's up for us to decide. Well, if you have any questions about twisted guilt and true guilt or control and influence, please put them down below, and I'll be happy to answer them. If you haven't subscribed, I'd appreciate if you do so already, and we'll continue with more psychology topics in the future. All right, continue to push the love forward.